Today's episode is brought to you by Deliver Fund, crushing evil in 2025 and beyond. Look down in the show notes for more information. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Gravity Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chris. Thank you for choosing to tune in today. Hey, folks, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're well, because we're back at it, folks. We are back at it. How do we stay grounded in a world full of noise and chaos? What are your foundations? What are the things that keep you from getting carried away? I've said this a lot of times before. For Jamie and I, it's our relationships, our experiences, our values. These are the things that help us pause for a moment, take a breath, and reassess what is going on around us. Today's guest, I reached out to today's guest because I've heard a lot of concern in Washington State amongst the law enforcement world of the Office of Independent Investigation. It's a new thing created by a state law and just a lot of unknown. And I don't know about you, but when there is something that's unknown, it's dangerous. For 25 years, areas that were unknown to me, people that were unknown, were potentially a threat. And so I needed to step into those places and assess and get to know them so that I could figure out whether they were they were truly a threat or whether they were friendly. And so I was teaching a class here. It's been within the last 4 months. It was an instructor development class that I teach. And one of the students in the class, one of the student instructors, his name is Dustin Breen, and Dusty works for the Office of Independent Investigation. And what I loved was the topics that he used as he got certified as an instructor in Washington State. The topics that he decided to teach on had to do with this new office. And so it gave me perspective that I didn't have. And I think you're going to walk away with a better understanding, and I'm hoping less anxiety. If you're in the law enforcement world and you want to know that trained, competent investigators are going to show up if you get involved in a major call, I think you're going to have better perspective after listening to today's episode. So folks, strap in, put on a helmet if necessary. Let's do this. Dustin Breen, welcome to the Gravity Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Hey, I appreciate you following up on this. I know that we're both busy people, and so it's not easy to connect always.
Yeah, it was. I was happy when you approached me when we met about perhaps doing this, and know it's taken a couple months to come to fruition, but super excited to be here doing it.
Yeah, I know that it's hard to see our backgrounds just because it's limited and blurry and stuff like that. Am I seeing a nice sunny day wherever you're located? Is that true?
It's not very. There's light outside you can see coming through, but it's more the gray, dreary
Okay, yeah.
Washington weather. I'm over here on the west side of the state, so
Yeah. What we normally expect on the west side of the state. A
yes,
little dreary. We have a nice sunny day here in the Tri-Cities. Yeah, this is like my favorite time of year. It's where like I can wear jeans and a t-shirt. I can throw on a sweatshirt if I want, but I don't have to. I don't know. It's versatile. It's versatile. I got options.
yes.
Hey, Dusty, for folks that maybe haven't heard your name before, could you give us an introduction of who you are?
Sure. As you mentioned, my name is Dustin Breen. I'm a senior investigator with the Office of Independent Investigations for the state of Washington, newer agency that was created back in 2021. I've been with them since March of 2024, and I work in our area that's known as Region 1. Which is about 12 counties, that is Southwest Washington, and up into the Olympic Peninsula. And that's my current occupation. Prior to that, I did work in law enforcement for 26 years.
So they didn't just like pull you off the street. It wasn't just like, hey,
No.
are you looking for a job? You're at labor ready. Hey, hop in the car. We got a job as an independent investigator.
Yeah. No, quite the background. So,
What did you do in law? I mean, you said 27 years?
26 actually employed.
26. All right, so 26 years of law enforcement. My guess is you did a number of different positions. What were some of the areas that you specialized in during your law enforcement career?
To start off, I'll just talk a little bit about the beginning. I actually, so growing up, I had two state patrol troopers as neighbors, and that kind of got me interested in law enforcement. As a kid, I actually wanted to be an astronaut, but then the Challenger incident happened in first grade, and apparently I'm not good with statistics and thought that seemed really dangerous, so I started leaning towards law enforcement. And through my neighbors, I ended up being involved in like some community event programs. And then one of them later became the dare officer for the city of Chehalis, and I would help him with different events. Through that, I learned about the Explorer program. And basically, at 14, I had just passed eighth grade, 14, as soon as I could join, I became an Explorer for the Lewis County Sheriff's Office. And so I was an explorer throughout high school. Um, and then I had a really unique opportunity. My senior year, I had a lot of plans to go away to college and do different things. A number of things happened that year, life challenges, parents separating. I found out as a type 1 diabetic, which at 17 is definitely a change in lifestyle and everything else. And so I ended up staying home from college. And when I was an explorer, I always jokingly say we weren't real great, apparently, with liability in the 90s because we couldn't go on ride-alongs out on the road with deputies till we were 16. But at 14, they let me hang out and work in the jail. And so, yeah, I'd be going around in there doing checks, actually sitting and booking, helping booking people, things that we would never do today with anybody that was underage. But that experience, because of that, when I was 18, our corrections bureau was hiring, they're supposed to be hiring a number of people. That never came to be. They only hired a couple people at that time. But I sought out an age waiver with civil service. And so, because of my experience in volunteering, our administration at the time supported that. So I actually became commissioned corrections officer at 18 years old. Um, and at Lewis County, it is a commission position. So carrying a firearm, all those things. I jokingly tell people I could carry a gun. I couldn't go buy one. I couldn't buy ammunition, but I was working. And when I turned 21, I went out to patrol. I tested for the road, headed off to Belia, did all those fun things. Uh, Came back and I worked patrol for just about 3 years. And at that point, an opportunity opened up for what we were calling a special assignments deputy at the time, which was basically a catch-all position. But because of what I had done before as an explorer, I was used to a lot of these community events, going out doing these different things. I'd started to get involved in training, and they offered me this position, and it was really a win-win. I got to become an Explore advisor, so give back to the program that kind of helped me.
Yes. Yeah.
Was a reserve coordinator. And then it also allowed me to start getting involved more and more in training. I was never a defensive tactics instructor, but use of force wise, became a firearms instructor, taser instructor, basic use of force case law type stuff. Again, never wristy twisty defensive tactics stuff, but the rest of that gamut. Became involved in search and rescue, a lot of the community events and programs. And one of the reasons I took that position is also allowed me to interact closer with the administration and policy and things of that nature, because I knew I wanted to promote and move up in my career. And I saw all these things as an opportunity to do that, to get more well rounded. I remember when I was first asked about search and rescue, I didn't think I was the person for that. We had all this equipment, these trailers. If you ever see me back a trailer, it's not a pretty sight. And I went back and initially I said no, and I went back and asked my bureau chief at the time. I'm like, why? Why this position? And I felt guilty because they were letting me do all these other things, right? I got to do all these cool training things. And basically, it came down to that more well-rounded, preparing myself for the future, doing these major incidents, having resources, figuring out how we're going to deploy those resources. And so I actually agreed to do it, learned a lot from all those positions. And I
Yeah.
was in that position for about 2.5 years, and then got promoted to sergeant at the ripe old age of 26, um, which was quite the learning part, leadership wise. Um, I think at the time at our agency on the patrol side of the house, there's only one person that was younger than me. So everybody I supervised on that first crew, some were probably double my age at that point.
Oh, I
And
bet.
so interesting growth there. One as a leader, you're separating yourself from that work group, becoming a first level supervisor, and then with the age difference. Um, so I was a patrol sergeant for about 3 years as well. You'll see a theme like this 3 year thing. The first part of my career, it seemed like every 3 years I kind of got another opportunity. Um, so after 3 years, which would have been in December of 2008 ish, right in there. I was approached about taking over our detective division. There had been some movement within the agency. Um, I believed I always wanted to be in detectives, and when I got promoted to sergeant, I thought that door had closed.
Oh, yeah.
When that opportunity came up, and the age I was at, I didn't want to pass up the opportunity to be a supervisor because I knew I wanted to move up. But at the same time, I was fearful that I had closed a lot of doors because, that cuts off specialties, it cuts off the ability to do different things. At one point, I had wanted to do canine, and I realized that was going to close the door on that.
Yeah.
Um, Although, as a patrol sergeant, I got to supervise the canine program and be somewhat involved. So that kind of like half checkbox on that one. But
Got some
uh,
exposure still. Got some exposure. Not being
exactly.
a handler, but got some exposure. Yeah.
Correct. And again, a lot with the case law and running a program, the liability pieces of it. Um, so as this detective sergeant, I'm excited going in because I'd never been a detective. I thought that door was closed. I'm like, I'm now getting this opportunity. And so I would spend the next little over 6 years as detective sergeant in our agency. And I have to tell you that my time at Lewis County, that was probably, looking back in my mind, that was the best time of my career. Uh,
Why? What made it so great?
I won the group of people I worked with. Our crew of detectives, we were like sometimes a very dysfunctional family, but we we were very much a family.
That's just kind of a prerequisite for being a law enforcement family, I
It,
think. Being a little
it
bit
is.
dysfunctional.
It is. And so everybody had their strengths and everybody worked on balancing each other. And a lot of times in law enforcement, you will work with people that sometimes will trip somebody else up to make them shine a little bit more. I think we've all
Mhm.
worked with those individuals that want to climb sometimes at the detriment of others.
Yeah.
This group, those personalities didn't exist. Everybody worked together. We were a team. We succeeded together as a team.
Yeah.
And we had some pretty major events for a rural county our size. Um, we had 2000, if I remember the year correctly, it was 2011. We had a number of suspicious death, homicide activity going on. We had a triple homicide that was almost a quadruple. And during that time, we were still working a case that happened just prior to that of a 16-year-old boy who had gone missing in the Morton area and then was found dead. And both those cases ended up being adjudicated. We moved all the way through that process. and the group just always came together as a team. And I think you asked me why. It was also very rewarding because I felt like I was making a difference. And I'm not trying to take away from other types of law enforcement, but if you're working traffic all the time, getting suspended and stuff, that's those are stats, those are things happening. But like the
Yeah.
homicide cases, I felt like I was really making an impact in people's lives and the families, the loved ones of someone who had somebody, lost.
Yeah.
I felt like I was truly making a difference in there. And again, the group I worked with was great. And
Were
uh,
they if I could ask, were they a high
sure.
functioning? It sounds like they were a high functioning team.
Yes.
Just were they a high functioning team before you joined it? Were you the only person that got added to that team? Did other people get added about that same time?
So in 2008, the prior detective sergeant that was in there, she got promoted out, and she had done a lot to get that detective division running smoothly. And I'm never going to be the person that's like, yeah, it was me. I went in there and great things happened. She had set a really good foundation when I came in. Um, but I've always been kind of that team player. In like high school, I was the kid that kind of got along with everybody and tried to bring everybody together. And I find out now in my current job as well that I'm one of those people that tries to bring people together and motivate us and get things done.
Yeah.
And what was interesting in that group is one of the detectives who would be we didn't have like designation of like a lead detective or a corporal, somebody that was there when I was gone.
Yeah.
But the person that would fill that role, if you had that title, he had been my FTO when I first came to patrol. And we had both taken the same sergeant assessment center, and I had gotten promoted, he had not. And now, 3 years later, I'm coming into detectives. And there's a point to the story. I know I'm kind of
I, I
running
I'm
away.
excited for it. Keep going.
So when I first got in there, he came in to talk to me one day, and he's like, "Hey," he goes, "I think I'm gonna go." He goes, "I think I'm gonna ask to go back to the road." And this is right after I came in. And I'm like, hey, I really need you here. I was never a detective. I think I've done fairly well as a patrol supervisor because they offered me this position. But there's a lot of things about detectives I don't know. I'm like, can you just give me? And I go and I basically said, I know this must be uncomfortable for you, the sergeant test, FTOing me, everything like that, but I really need your help. I can't do this without you. Can you give it 6 months? If you want to go back to the road at that point, I'll be more than happy, everything else. And that didn't happen. He ended up we stayed in there till the end together. Learned a lot from him. But he came up to me one day and he goes, uh, you've changed the dynamic of teamwork in this unit. And this is why I tell this story. And to me, there wasn't like a different way of doing it. That's just how I wanted to run that unit.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it was already a high functioning team when I got in there. And I think I just built on that and kept us going because of the people that were in there before me that set us up. But everybody was dedicated. I remember times, this is bad to say. I remember a Thanksgiving where I'm sitting and there's family members and stuff, and a lot of that family holiday. And I'm sitting back, and I remember grabbing out my personal phone and texting them because we had our personal text group. And I'm like, is anybody else kind of hoping for a call out so we spend the day together? And everybody's like, yes, like everybody's responding back and just kind of that dynamic it was a great high functioning team.
Hey, folks, a quick break in the episode to recognize our sponsors. This episode of the Gravity Podcast is brought to you by Deliver Fund. Deliver Fund is a nonprofit organization that equips law enforcement officers and eventually prosecutors with cutting edge tools, training, and intelligence to fight human trafficking. And here's the best part of it, folks. They do this 100% free for criminal justice organizations. This is what attracted Jamie and I to the Deliver Fund mission, and this is why we give money on a monthly basis to be part of the Deliver Fund team. I didn't want to just share my experience though. I want to read someone else's. I'm going to read this from Ryan Dill. He's an assistant county attorney for Hillsborough County in New Hampshire, and he writes, "I handle child sexual abuse, child exploitation, and human trafficking cases. The work Deliver Fund does is critical to my work by giving intelligence to agencies and investigators, and I can use that evidence in court to hold those people accountable and put people," pretty much what he says is put people who abuse children behind bars. Folks, whether you're a prosecutor or a law enforcement officer, you need to look down in the show notes. You need to learn more about Deliver Fund so you know how you can use this resource. And if you're like me, you're not a commissioned police officer or you're not one anymore, you can still be part of this team. You can choose, like I do, to give money on a monthly basis. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see what my shirt says, to crush evil. So please check them out in the show notes. This episode is also brought to you by First Responder Health and Wellness, a telemedicine provider built specifically for those who serve. You know, as a first responder, sleep is everything. And like many of you, I've struggled with this. That's why I started using their supplement lines. And since adding this to my overall sleep routine, I've seen a noticeable improvement, both in my sleep quality and then also in the way I feel in the morning, my recovery. And it's because they get it, folks. It's because they get it. They've lived it. And whether it's quality supplements or if you're looking for a new primary care provider, First Responder Health and Wellness is here to keep both you and the first responder families mission ready. And here's a bonus, folks. Gravity Podcast listeners get 15% off of supplements at checkout by using the code GRAVITY15. Folks, learn more. Look down in the show notes or visit firstresponderhealth.net and really take your wellness into your own hands. With that, folks, let's get back into this episode. That's awesome. I was thinking through my experience in detectives as a supervisor, and similarly, I joined a high functioning team. It was a street crimes unit. I'd never been a street crimes detective. And I had that senior detective. He was in a position of number two, meaning when I was gone, he was upgrade pay to pretty much acting sergeant, but they just called it OIC. And they didn't call it DIC just because of what it would sound like, I think. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Detective in charge,
Yes.
you know, that would actually be more accurate than officer in charge. But that
Not a
just
good
came to mind.
acronym.
That's the first time I've ever told that joke. I'm not joking. So it just popped into my brain. I was like, I'm going to say that. Anyhow, it was a high functioning team. One thing I did notice when I joined the team, if you think about Tuckman's model, we went from being a high functioning team back to forming. It was short lived, but I caused, which if this is what Tuckman's model says is if you take someone off the team, if you add someone new to the team, you're going to go back to forming at least for a period of time. Because what does this mean again? We have new people. What are our roles? What are, our responsibilities? And so it took a little bit with that communication piece, but I owe so much, and I'm going to name him. I owe so much to Keith Schwartz because of his tenure on the team. He'd been on the team for like 13 years. I think he FTO'd Jesus. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check with him. Anyhow, he'd been on the team for so long. He had so much historical knowledge. He had a lot of wisdom. He had those leadership abilities. The only reason he wasn't a sergeant is because he chose not to take the test, quite frankly. But it was just so much fun. It was so much fun. I've been on a few high functioning teams throughout my life. Most of them were short lived because all of those people were superstars and they were getting promoted and going to other specialties and stuff like that. But I love giving that shout out to whoever those senior line level people are and the influence that they have over the bigger team in leading from their spot. And if they choose to move on and get promoted in the future, I love it. But I'm just saying, recognizing that you're a leader wherever you're at, I think is so critical.
No, I agree. And I also agree with your, going back to the forming phase and then, that storming starts and you start getting the groove. But it, when you were telling that piece, it made me think of that same individual. They tested me a little bit when I got in there. The whole team did, where there was a summary on death investigations, like a cover sheet that I don't think they like doing. And because it's kind of redundant work, right? As law enforcement, that's one thing. There's sometimes a lot of redundant paperwork. And so when I had been briefed on that position, our former detective sergeant, she sat down, did a good job of going over everything. Like, this is what's expected of you as a sergeant here, everything else. And I was already kind of a case management nerd, so like that part of it was pretty easy. But so she talks about these summary sheets, and the very first one I get in, they try submitting it without a summary sheet. I go in there and I'm like, hey. And then that same individual was like, okay, guys, he knows about the sheet, and it was just one of those like, okay, we're not going to get away with this. But there is always that kind of testing that, someone new comes in and yeah.
Oh, I would actually be disappointed. I would be disappointed if they didn't test us on some level. I don't know if I'd really be disappointed. But I saw some of the same stuff, especially with my first patrol squad. I had seven like brand new folks, so I had a little bit different experience. I didn't promote until later in my career, and so my first squad had seven like rookies. I think six of them were on probation, and then three senior dudes that had been cops, for 25, 30 years or whatever. But again, just man, just great experiences. I loved stepping into the role of supervisor because it was no longer about me and the work that I did. It was about me supporting the people that did the work and watching other people. I really enjoy being a cheerleader. Now, there were still times I had to sit there and roadside people and we had to talk about performance. But most of the time, it was high fives. Most of the time, it was like, wow, that's great work. And I just enjoyed that. I enjoyed watching other people do great work and being there to support them, get them the stuff that they need, and then cheer them on.
Yeah, I agree when especially moving into later in my career administrative positions and so forth. It was always one of those. I remember I had when I was a chief, I had a new captain come in underneath me, and that was one of the first conversations we had. I'm like, it's not about your career anymore. It's about supporting everybody else, and our successes are their successes type thing. So 100% agree. But
And, and at Lewis County, the role of chief, so you probably had sheriff. Did you guys have an undersheriff?
correct.
And then you had chiefs of divisions. Is that correct?
Yeah, we had three bureau chiefs. So you had one over corrections. You had the chief criminal deputy, which was also called the field operations chief. Then you had the chief civil deputy, which we called the special services chief.
Okay.
Uh,
And then you decided to go up and retire. What led to retiring when you did? You still look like a pretty young guy.
I am, and I'm not at that magical 53 left age to be actually drawing. Despite that's what happens when you start at 18. You got 26 years and you're still not old enough to actually get the check. But so going back to detectives, if I can go back there for a moment, since
Yeah, please
that
do.
kind of sets the stage for this. Um, so as detective sergeant, when I first got in there in 2008, one of the things that was just beginning was the Region 3 Critical Incident Investigation Team. And so what this was a five-county team. So it was comprised of Lewis, Mason, Thurston, Grays Harbor, and Pacific counties. And what was unique about this team is it was just the sheriff's offices. We didn't have any of the city agencies participating in it. In the beginning, State Patrol was involved as like a support agency. Later, they'd actually become a full team member, if you will. But the whole point of that regional team was to investigate incidents, critical incidents involving deputies, was what it was initially for. And then as time went on, we got involved in some of the cities, doing investigations for them as well. But as a critical incident team, it wasn't just about officer involved shootings or use of deadly force, although that was primarily what we did. It could be any critical incident. So if you had a deputy that was shot and injured, or hit with a vehicle or something like that, we could come in and do that. We had a case where a deputy in Grace Harbor had her firearm taken from her. She was shot. There was a judge that was stabbed. We took that incident, although law enforcement, didn't use deadly force. So it's more than just OISs, but primarily officer involved shootings. And so I got to be one of the early team leaders in that group, and responsibility of the team would rotate between those supervisors within those agencies. And it was a really good thing because we had this independent team where if Lewis County was involved, I would step back, and I would usually shadow everything that was being done, because later I'd be tasked with doing an administrative or internal investigation, and that way I could get that information firsthand, which is a little bit different in today's IIT worlds. Uh, but otherwise, Lewis County wouldn't be involved in that investigation. The other four counties would. And it also really brought unity to that region, where all of a sudden I have an investigation and somebody I need to contact in Mason County, rather than driving all the way up there. All of a sudden now I have a phone a friend up there I can call. So it built good relationships that way. And we even started among that region doing what we called gold leadership training, that was essentially rebranding of LPO, leadership and police organizations. I got to help instruct on a lot of that as well. So that kind of built up from that region. So um, I had experience doing investigations into the use of deadly force. Initially, when I come out of detectives into my administration world, because I spent the last 9 years basically of my career in administration. The first position I took was a captain position at Lewis County. Um, Although there's still technically, I think, on the books, a civil service lieutenant position, like on the civil service books, when I put it that way.
Yeah.
That position hasn't existed for quite some time. The captain or patrol commander position is an appointed position by the sheriff. So
Okay.
initially in 2015, I'm appointed to the captain position, which previously just oversaw patrol. When I was promoted into it, they moved detectives underneath me too. So I still had detectives and patrol. And then in September of 2016, I became our chief civil deputy. And that detectives, again, had never been part of that division or that bureau, but moved over with me when I went over there. I think they're like, we're never getting rid of this guy. He keeps getting promoted. We keep reporting to him. And then eventually, from I believe it was about September of 2020 till I left, I was the went into the field operations chief position, or chief criminal deputy, and that was the first time that I didn't have detectives underneath me since I've been a detective sergeant. So that's how I spent. And as I'm going through this administrative part of my career, um, when you work at a sheriff's office, it's a highly political environment,
Oh, completely.
and sometimes sometimes your ideas, your solutions are not the same of others, and I found myself kind of getting this rut. Like, um, I really love detectives when I was in there. I think mental health wise, it was a good time when I got out of detectives at that 6 year mark, and all the big cases we've had and things we're
Oh,
involved on.
yeah.
I
Completely.
think it was good for a change of pace to go in administration, but I really felt like I missed doing the investigative work, and I just kind of found myself in that rut where I'm like, I'm not really enjoying everything like I used to. It's not,
I've I've seen that with a bunch of administrators, right? Because they
yeah,
get promoted because they were good doers, they were good supervisors of the doers, and so they get promoted. And I've seen a number of folks, especially folks that got promoted pretty young, like you, and they're effective as administrators, but I just don't see a smile on their face anymore.
yeah,
They
uh,
don't love doing meetings all day long. They would rather be out there doing some of the work again.
yeah. And that very much happened to me. And I found myself towards the end, um, like I would pull up for work in the morning. I'm sitting in my car, like trying to get the energy up just to go inside and deal with the next series of spot fires that came up.
Yeah,
And so I kind of found myself in this rut, if you will, and just I, I grew up. My dad worked at a coal mine the entire time I was alive. He worked at a coal mine here in Centralia, and as a kid, they always talked about shutting it down, and it finally did shut down at the end. But he worked out there the entirety of his life, and like in my family, there's great value to working at the same place. Like if you could spend your entire career there, I
yeah,
was very proud that I had 26 years there. If you throw the volunteer time on, I was there for 30 years, one way or another.
yeah,
But it was one of those I'm like, there has to be more to this than just this. And I found like I was just waiting to hit 53 so I could get that retirement check. And I remember sitting there, and because early on in my career, I had told myself, don't become one of those people at the end that are just holding on, waiting. Because you see them when you start, you're like, man, why is he still like he's not happy? Why is he still
yeah,
here?
yeah,
And I'm like, I start becoming concerned I might be becoming that guy. And I'll tell you the other weird thing is one day I'm having all these like internal internal thoughts of like maybe there's more out there. Maybe I should try going someplace else. And this is going to sound really cheesy. I'm going to warn you right now, but I am really liking the music. Anybody who knows me knows I will break out. I'm the guy that breaks out the song lyrics, like just works them into conversations and stuff, right? And always enjoyed music and everything else. And I was listening to a remake of Bruce Springsteen, um, Dance in the Dark, and it was a slowed down version. And if you listen to the words in that song, it's about a guy who gets up, goes to work, comes home, and like there's nothing. And part of the song talks about you can't light a fire without a spark, and you can't risk like your little world falling apart. And I know again, no, it sounds super cheesy, but it hit me just at the right time when I'm processing all these thoughts, and I'm like, I'm so comfortable in this. I've been here for 26 years. I have civil service protection. Because worst case scenario, new sheriff came in, didn't want me in a appointed position, something like that. I'd go back to being a civil service sergeant. Not the worst gig in the world.
yeah,
And it was comfortable, it was safe, and all of a sudden, I'm listening to that, I'm having all these thoughts, I'm like, I need to push my comfort zone and do something different. And so at that point, I decided to start looking. And I'll back up a little bit. During 2021, during that legislative session, there was a lot of reform legislation that came out.
yeah,
And part of my job as the field operations chief at the time was to make sure we are adequately updating our employees. And so during the legislative session, I'm following all these events. I'm looking at the changes. You're having to push out. I mean, that was the year we saw big use of force stuff that the next year in legislation, some things had to be clarified. All those things are going on. Well, part of that 2021 legislation was the Office of Independent Investigations. And when I had first heard about it, um, I remember thinking, well, that would be a great job when I retire because I really like doing those investigations. Over the years, I had done numerous internal investigations, administrative investigations in my positions.
right.
And then I'd also done criminal investigations for other counties into their law enforcement personnel. And so it was one of those. I'm like, I definitely have the skill set for it. But part of the RCW talks about, if you're former law enforcement and you've been in it within the last 2 years, you have to get approved by the advisory board. And then there was this part in there about a 5-year plan and, basically hiring civilians at some point, getting away from law enforcement. And so when this all came back up, this is a few years prior. And I'm thinking in my mind, well, time I'm 53, this 5 years is going to pass, everything else. And I'm like, but it really that it really resonated with me. And part of what I realized with that position is if their intent is to have civilians at some point, because that was the kind of the intent behind the work group that gave the recommendation that started the whole legislative process, if they do that, they need people in there that can build that foundation for the future, right? To set things
Yeah.
up training wise, everything else. So all that really like resonated with me back then, but it was kind of out of sight, out of mind. And I got the impression that really didn't want former law enforcement, and no one gave me that impression, right? That was just reading the RCW, everything else, kind of knowing the background behind it, listening to conversations at WASPIC, which may be accurate or not, depending, and just kind of listen to everybody's opinions. So basically around this time and all the stop process going in, I get an invite from Chris Lyles, who's my regional supervisor OII on LinkedIn, and he had been a Mason County detective, and I saw he's now working for OII, and I see they're hiring, and I had a whole bunch of questions because I'm like, man, he worked, he was part of that same regional team, not the same time I was, but he was on there. And so I reached out to him and I'm like, hey, can we talk more about this? And I went up to OII's headquarters that day and I talked to him. I met a few other people in the office that day, to include Jay Nesbitt, who is our chief of staff. Um, and she has been part of the agency since the beginning because she worked for L&I and was basically there were different state employees that were kind of loaned to OII in the beginning to start forming, to select a director, to do all these things that need to be doing before coming over. And she's our number two, the chief of staff position is just under our director. And I got to meet her that day. And if you ever get a chance to meet her, one of the most thoughtful people, like if you want an administrator that truly cares about employees, um, remembers things about them, brings up convers like I wish I was half as good as she is on that part of it,
Hmm.
but also asks a lot of good questions that make you stop and think and everything else. And so that day I came up, Chris and I are having lunch, and she joins us, and she's asked me different questions and everything else, and asking for input on different thoughts on different things coming up about OII and the work. And I went home that night and I told my wife, I go, this is gonna sound crazy because I'm the number three person at our agency right now at Lewis County. I go, I felt more valued today up there than I have in years at
That's a
at,
powerful statement.
at the agency.
Mm.
And it was that moment right then. I'm like, I want to talk to DRS first because I want to try to figure out how the retirement's going to work because
Yeah.
this is going back into PERS retirement. I have this huge chunk on left. Although I was a PERS employee back, in the jail side of it. So I needed to check into that, which I immediately scheduled a meeting with them and then applied. And I knew that moment, that meeting, I'm like, nope, this is the direction. It's a challenge. It's a brand new agency. And I know the fear that was out there, the concern, like, is this going to be done right? Because again, I'm going to those meetings, I'm going to those conferences, I'm hearing people being concerned. And part of what's going on is my mind is I'm like, I feel I have a fairly good reputation in law enforcement, especially in my region. And then even, I don't want to be like everybody knows me, but like statewide, you get into groups like I had been Explore Advisor, taught at the state academies,
Yeah.
been involved as a WASPIC liaison to that Explore program, everything else. So because of that, I had contact with a lot of individuals throughout the state, and I'm like, I think this brings validity to the agency, that it brings, that they're hiring
Credibility, right?
known individuals who have
Yes.
a background for doing this, that have the skills and abilities, and that's kind of, I saw it as a win-win. I saw it as a rebooting of my career for me and something to get excited about. But I also felt that there were things I honestly could help the agency with. And I don't try to mean that like in a conceited way, but I had been on one of those regional teams, and also progressing up through the ranks. Even though I'm getting hired to be an investigator, I have an understanding of what goes on with administration. I have an
Yeah.
understanding of what goes on in management. And so I'm like, I think there's ways I can help. We talked earlier about being that informal leader, and that's a lot of what I try to do at the agency is, sometimes give advice, or have conversations like, hey, and it's usually things a lot. When I talked earlier about gold leadership and training as part of that regionally, a lot of the stories I shared in that are things I screwed up as a supervisor or a leader. So when I say I'm bringing experience, some of that experience is because of things I could have done better. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, I know we're talking about this. Have we thought about this? And I'll tell you why is because I did something similar. I have those opportunities, and OII is open and listens to, the input of its employees quite a bit, and
I love that.
um, completely different environment than traditional law enforcement. And I already mentioned earlier, like the treatment of employees and everything. It's so different. Law enforcement, I hate when people use the word toxic because I think it gets overused.
Yeah.
Um, but traditional law enforcement, can be a pretty toxic environment. There are just these systems that have been built up over the years. And OII is this brand new agency that we're a limited authority agency, law enforcement agency, but we're not like traditional law enforcement at all. And it gives us an ability to operate and kind of build our own culture instead of, these, because a lot of the things that I think, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but there's things that you probably think are toxic in law enforcement. I think all of us can identify things. Those are usually holdovers from some historical way of doing things that just hasn't been let go of, at least in
Yeah.
my opinion.
When we first adopted, I think Tri Cities adopted a regional team in 2008 as well. And the biggest issue I saw was a lack of training, not in the investigators. They were remarkable investigators. Most of them were part of persons, crimes, homicide at their home agencies. But we didn't do a great job of training up our teams of what it was going to look like and feel like if you were involved in a officer involved shooting in custody death, whatever. When we called it SIU here, Special Investigative Unit. And so it worked out. It just took a few repetitions and some failures and some big backlash of how people were frustrated with the process. What has OII done to on the education piece? Because I feel like that's huge. That's how we bridge this gap, right?
Yeah.
When we have these rumors going around of they're hiring people off the street and people don't even know how to investigate, a petty theft, let alone an officer involved shooting. How what have you guys had the opportunity to do anything to bridge that gap?
Yes. And I'll tell you what's interesting is, um, so right now we're only live in region one for actually responding to incidents that are occurring. We're only at this time handling fatalities, and that's just because we're growing as an agency, resources, bring on personnel, all that takes time. And so, we're biting that off in chunks. And so Region 1 comes live, which again is 12 counties. In that 12 county area, you have at least six that I can think of existing IIT teams.
Okay.
Those teams, there's going to be some common threads, but everybody does things a little bit different. I came from a team where when we did officer processing, we took pretty much everything. If you had a change of clothes at the office or you had someone bring it in, and we were taking everything. And there's other agencies that weren't that way. And so even in this region we're operating, going into it, we knew that there were going to be differences, and people are going to feel those differences. And much like you talked about in my prior career in the Region 3 involvement, like as a firearms instructor, I would try to like I think I try to do it once a year. In reality, it probably happened like every other year. We're up at the range. I try to talk to everybody about it because that was a good time, right? We're talking about the use of deadly force. I'm talking about Graham v. Connor, Garner v. Tennessee. We're going over all those things. So let's talk about what to expect, when that happens. So OII comes into the picture. Now we're going to have a set way of doing things, which may differ from what they're used to in that region. Because again, even in those 12 counties, there's differences. And so some of the outreach, we will take invitations to come talk to different groups. Um, a lot of the outreach initially was to other IIT, I should say other IIT, to IIT teams
Yeah.
to talk with them and have discussion about how OII is going to operate. But then we've also met up with different in-service groups that have asked us to come talk. Kitsap County, for example, we've been out there, talk to their people. Bremerton, I know there's others I'm forgetting right now. The Guild in Lewis County invited us down to talk to them. And so we try to do that outreach so they know what to expect, um, and have the chance to meet us to kind of break those barriers down, like we talked about. When you have this unknown. It's really fear of the unknown. These
100%.
these changes happen. Of course, I used to always joke when I was in law enforcement, particularly in admin. I used to joke all the time that there's two things cops hate: it's change and the lack of change, because they'll complain about change or when things don't change. But that change is scary. No matter who you are in life, change is often met with some apprehension. There's that, like, I don't know who these people are. I don't know what their intent is.
Yeah.
And so we've tried to do that reach out as much as possible, and given them the like, this is what to expect. Honestly, when we were doing our class up there, where you and I first met, doing the CJTC instructor development, I chose to present on officer processing for two reasons. One, I already told you my background. Did train in a lot of areas. I could have, as a stop stick instructor, I trained the trainer. I could have gone over that. I could have done a lot of different things. I'm a PTO, trained the trainer and stuff too. The reason I chose officer processing, I looked at that as an opportunity to educate those that were in the class with us, because there was a lot of, although we had a contingency from OII in that course, we had a lot of law enforcement there too. So I try to take the time um, to let them know what to expect, and to
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about our agency, because there's other misconceptions out there we deal with all the time. One of them is that we're attached to the Attorney General's office. I hear that one still to this day, and we're
Oh,
our own independent agency. We are not attached to them. And when I run into law enforcement, those I work with before, people I know, I always try to explain a little bit about our processes and what our focus is on, and that um, our agency doesn't write a conclusion at the end of these reports. To keep that bias out of it, we are just collecting facts. And I think that's a fear, that we're coming to a conclusion and maybe trying to direct things one way or another. We're not. We're collecting all the facts. The facts may be good, they may be bad. That's not our determination. That's for a prosecutor to decide. Which is another common misconception, is again, that investigation goes to Attorney General's office. or some state prosecutorial agency, our investigations go to the prosecutor of jurisdiction. So just like an IIT team would now, it goes to that home prosecutor.
I think those are huge truths that people have to hear. They knowing again, knowing the process. When we wait until the first time someone's learning about a process is during probably the most critical event they're ever going to go through in their life. And that's when they learn it's just a recipe for surprise, right? I mean, that's what it is. It's a surprise. And I
Yeah,
don't like as a cop, I did not like to be surprised. I wanted to, and I don't think most people do, unless it's like a,
no,
happy birthday. Other than that, I don't want a surprise. I want to understand what's going to happen. And the more we can talk about that, I feel like we can alleviate a lot of people's anxieties.
no, I agree. And it's getting that information out there. And like I said, there's a lot of misinformation from the beginning. And those were all things I was hearing when again, during those legislative updates at WASPIC and everything. When I went into that first meeting I talked about, I actually said something about the AG's office, and they're like, we don't work for the AG's office. And I was embarrassed because usually I'm pretty good at reading RCWs and understanding stuff. And I went in there, I had the wrong idea. And I know, and I was interested, and there's other people that don't, have that level of interest and maybe not keeping up with it. The other thing is two of our investigations have been completed. And so, in addition to the normal reports you would expect to see during an investigation, we also do a final case summary or a final case report. And that document's basically a summary document. It was based largely on our operations manager comes from a pilot background. And if you're familiar with NTSB, when they put out their findings, kind of that a summary report. And that was kind of the idea, I think, that led to the summary. But our mission is to conduct fair, thorough, transparent, and competent investigations, and that transparency is a huge thing because uh, we want facts out there. We want people to focus on facts, not rumor, speculation. And to make that available to everybody, to law enforcement, the general public, everybody should have access to that. Everybody should have an understanding. And even in these final reports, we go into um, describing like terminology because in law enforcement, a lot of terminology is used. So at OII, we try to break that down for ease of readers. But all those final case summaries, once our investigation is done, is posted on our website. And right now, there's two of them on there. And we still, when we're going out doing this educational research or educational outreach, not research, sorry. We run to people and we're like, hey, has anybody read our final? Because we know there's this fear of the unknown,
Yeah.
and it's surprising how many people haven't taken the time to read those. So I would encourage anybody who's listening that's curious about what those look like to go to OII's website and take a look at those. And our first one's been out since May. I was the lead investigator on that very first case, and you can get an idea of what's being documented, what's being collected, and there's a higher I will say there's a higher documentation level compared to what I was used to in that regional team I was a member of, long ago. But it's all putting those facts together again for that prosecutor to make that final decision. Um,
I love it. Are you able to speak about a timeline, or is it totally to be designated into the future in reference to when additional regions are going to be activated?
I know that our leadership team is currently working on that, and um, I don't want to steal their thunder and give a timeline,
100%.
especially if it goes wrong.
Yeah.
Um, I they are actively working on that, trying to figure out the best way to go about that. And there's a lot of possibilities because we have 6 regions throughout the state. They were originally based on the statistical information that could be found about officer-involved shootings frequency wise. So, like I said, Region 1, 12 county area. Pierce County and King County are each their own separate regions.
Oh, wow.
And again, that's based on frequency. So
Yeah.
similar, the 12 counties in Region 1, similar to what you're seeing out of Region 2, bigger population, so forth. Um, so it's divided in those six regions. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we're only taking fatalities right now. So another possibility is we may then move to taking all deadly use of force incidents, whether it's a fatality or whether the person survived. Right now, again, just taking that fatality portion. So right now, statewide, I think OII, like all employees, I think we're at about 66 or 67. Investigation staff wise, which is including five regional investigation supervisors, um, we're at 31 statewide for investigations personnel. And you
Okay.
think about initially responding to a scene, the amount it takes.
Oh,
So
yeah.
right now, even though Region 1's active, we have the other regions are responding in, to assist us. And so, as uh, as you can imagine, our leadership team trying to figure out where to best use those resources and everything else. I know there's plans on opening, I believe, another region. I mean, that's been the goal, is to get another region open. When that will be and what that looks like, I still don't know.
Yeah.
But
And I think it's best not to talk specifics just because sometimes we have tentative timelines that we're aiming for, but the reality is there's always so many different factors that we can't control. And
there
so
are.
so what I'm hearing is if folks want to learn more, there's really two things. Right now, everyone can get on OII's website, open one of those posted investigative reports, and you can see the process. And again, since we're probably familiar with what our local, again, I call it SIU. What were they calling it over on the west side of the state? That
We were a critical incident investigation team, and now because of some of the changes from 2018 to 2020, they're usually referred to as IIT teams, independent
IIT.
investigation teams,
Okay.
based on the best practices that CJTC put out. That is a result of I-940, which passed then in 2018, and then over the next couple of years, there were different portions of that went into effect.
Okay.
So
So I mean, someone that we have something we can compare it to, meaning our local teams that have been doing these investigations. And then the second one is if your region starts to get brought online, and there is OII in your region now, reaching out to OII and saying, "Hey, can you guys come in and give us some pre-incident training, just so that our teams, our individuals, know what to expect if this happens in our area."
correct. And we've also done outreach to areas that we're not active in yet as well.
Oh,
So there
I like
there
that.
is that as well. And yeah, trying to get it out there as much as possible and get that information out there ahead of time.
I love that, brother. What do you do? I always like to ask a wellness question. What do you do right now just to de-stress? Stress is a part of life for all industries, for all occupations. My neighbors who are not law enforcement, not prior law enforcement, they experience stress in their normal pace of life. What do you do to stay healthy?
Uh, it's a lot of time just with my family, and we talked right before we went on. I have become weirdly interested in playing pinball, and now have pinball machines, which is a great stress release there. Coming out and playing. I have a couple old cars I work on, and just what's been interesting about coming back as an investigator and doing this type of work is the prevalence of body cam and in-car video now is so much more than it was before. I mean,
Oh yeah.
occasionally agencies would have an in-car or body cam, but now on these incidents, when we're working these cases, and there's times where we're watching that video over and over, or we're trying to transcribe what's being said in that video. That first case I talked about, I don't know how. I probably watched that video 100 times, and you're seeing someone lose their life 100 times. So
Yeah.
it's been interesting because again, it's not like traditional law enforcement where you're in a car going to these calls all day long. You go to a scene, but then all the video stuff, all that still kind of adds on. And so that's something we've talked about quite a bit as employee wellness at OII and everything else long term. For me, it's just finding those healthy outlets and trying not to let that occupy my mind, to find that time with family. I think early on in law enforcement, I'd shut myself off to my family quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I've learned over the years that, and somehow I thought that was protecting them, right? You think you're
Yeah.
keeping
Yeah.
them from something. And really, I've learned if you just talk about it, and coworkers there have a lot of great coworkers I can talk to and things as well. And then family wise, my daughter got interested in firefighting as a volunteer firefighter. And so that now she's seeing things in life that are similar, going to scenes occasionally and things like that. And so it's funny as they've grown up and everything, I don't feel like, I have to protect them, that we can talk about these things. I think it's good for her too to talk about these things because then she's realizing that's normal to have these conversations, everything else. So I think it's
Yeah.
really having people you can talk to, and then finding outlets. If you're just going to sit and watch TV and let your brain get wrapped around it, it's not the answer. You got to get out and do something, no matter, if it's physical activity, if it's, like I said, working on old cars, playing pinball, just find an outlet.
I love it. Talk about it and figure out what kind of hobbies can help shift your brain from the thing to these other things. Hey, Dusty, for folks that may want to connect with you, what are the best ways for them to reach out?
My email, uh,
I love
and
it.
then LinkedIn as well.
All right. Well, for the listeners, I'm going to make that real easy. Dusty's email will be a link down in the show notes along with his LinkedIn account. Dusty, time is my greatest commodity. I can't make more of this stuff, brother, and you have given me a lot of yours. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to come on and talk today.
Yeah. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Wow, folks, what did you think about my interview with Dusty? I really enjoyed where our conversation went, hearing about his background, hearing about what they're doing in the Office of Independent Investigation, and then there at the tail end also hearing about some unique things that he likes to do to keep his brain and body healthy. Hey, folks, Jamie and I want to hear from you. How are we doing here on the podcast? There's a few different ways for you to communicate back to us. First and foremost, please follow us on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. That will cause the next episode to come up in your dashboard. You can also rate and review us if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. There's 5 stars waiting on our main page. We'd really appreciate a 5-star rating if we've earned all 5 stars, folks. If we haven't earned 5 stars, keep your stars. Instead, shoot me an email at chris@gravityct.com. Let us know how to make it better, future Mighty Monday motivating ideas, or guests for me to interview. Folks, we only get to live this life once. Let's go out and take care of the people in our tribes. Take care of each other. God bless.